All right, today we're going to start out with just a small piece of walnut, 3 or 4 inches in diameter. And I have a roughing gouge there just to get it round, pretty round, just kind of get started. And then I went over to a skew chisel just to remove waste here. I'm using a peeling cut, pretty effective cut to remove a lot of waste. Doesn't really give a good finish, but a good way to remove a lot of waste. So I'm going to true up the end here. That looks like I have a detail gouge. Sometimes I'll use a bowl gouge to true up the end right there. But there I'm using just a detail spindle gouge. This project was a pure accident. So I just had that video where I was making the birds, and people really liked that video. It was a simple project that a lot of newer type turners can make, and pretty simple. Don't have to have a giant lathe or anything fancy to make those birds. And I was going to make another bird because they're selling pretty well, and I just mismanaged how big of a piece of wood I needed, and I just didn't have enough wood for a bird. And I ended up making one of these boxes. So I hope you like it. I think it's one of those happy little accidents, as Bob Ross would say. So I'm pretty happy with the final product. Here I'm just using a detail gouge, getting this round. This is all up to you. What shape do you want this? So we're doing a lidded box. I've done lidded boxes in the past where they require, putting them in chucks, taking them out of chucks, putting the lid back on top in a very tight fashion so that you can turn the lid, and very, very complicated compared to this. I took a parting tool there and just kind of marked where I wanted the bottom of this box, and now I'm using that detail gouge and just kind of doing a rolling cut here, cutting just left of the tip. So I'm cutting on that side wing, and then when I'm going this way, I'm cutting on the right, just right of the tip. So you're not really cutting with the very tip of that detail gouge. I know I've mentioned that often, but you need to know that if you're trying to learn how to turn these. Here I'm just trying to fine tune the shape that I want and trying to eliminate as much sanding as possible. That's, this here, how much bark do you want? That's kind of up to you, but I think this looks pretty good. And then I'm going to true up this end. It must have been a little rough, so I'm just going to take some really fine cuts. I'll probably turn the speed up a little bit just to get a really good, smoother finish there that requires very little sanding. As I'm sanding here, I'd like to take the opportunity to really thank all of the new subscribers for subscribing to the channel and the new viewers. It's been a really popular week for the channel, so it's encouraging to see a lot of new names and faces, and I hope you like the content. I am active, so if you ever have any questions on any of my videos, I will try to respond within a day or two, trying to answer your questions and even do follow-up videos if that's what it requires to better explain something for you. Always open to new ideas too. If there's something that you would like to see me turn and explain better, I'm open to ideas. I will get to it if I can. Here I just went to a smaller grit, or a higher grit I should say, sandpaper, probably a 220 grit, just trying to get rid of any sand marks. I love these spindle turning projects because you can sand with 150 grit and then 220 grit, and really the sanding marks just don't show up that much. So it's pretty easy to sand these projects. Just fine tune this. I want this to be pretty well finished before we go to the next step. Here's what it looks like. I'm liking it here. So this is important. This is where your lid's going to be. So you want to pick, I like to leave all of the bark. So I went above the bark here. I'm using a parting tool, the thinnest parting tool that I have, and I'm making a cut, and I do not want to part this all the way off. Before I get all the way to the end, I want to make sure I sand the edge of this lid. So I'll turn this lathe back on here and get a piece of sandpaper and you can actually put it in there and just kind of kind of dull that edge there. You don't want that to be a real sharp edge that can chip. So you can sand that. You can even use tools and round it if you want. Use your gouges, but I just sanded it and made it kind of a crisp edge. So there's what you have left on the bowl. I put the lid off to the side, and then I'm going to hollow this out. You can use many different ways to hollow these out. I mean, some people do the what's it called, back hollowing. I still have not been able to master that. I use this method where I just put the tool pretty much level with the center of this box, and I use a detail gouge and I put the tip into the center, and you can pretty much plunge it like a drill bit into the center, and then you just pull it and use that wing to cut the side grain off. So you're peeling side grain here. You're not really cutting in grain as you're coming up towards the side. And that's why you don't really get too much of a catch. As long as you're not taking too much of a bite, it won't catch too bad. Here you'll see me. I'm pretty lazy. You can get you a depth gauge or something. I pretty much just use my finger and see where on my knuckle the depth of the bowl is, and then I transfer that to the outside of the box just to kind of see how close am I to the bottom. So you'll see me do that a few times. Here I'm seeing how thin I need to make that so that the lid can fit in there. And you do not want to take off too much on the sides. So here that was close enough. Now I'm going to make a little shoulder for that lid to set in. And so I'll just keep fine-tuning that, moving the tool rest back until I get that where I want it. So I'll just take in a detail gouge here. I did try one with a parting tool, but you don't get as good of a cut. So if you can do this with your detail gouge, you'll get a smoother cut. You won't have that much sanding at all to do. So there you go. That kind of fits in. But I know wood sometimes warps when it dries a little extra when you take it in. So I was going to give this just a little extra. So I'm going to take a little bit more off. That way if the wood moves a little bit, the lid will still fit in there nice. At least that's the goal. Now I'm going to dull the edges with some sandpaper. Right there, just trying to make sure that looks really nice. Just a little teeny piece of sandpaper. And then I think I'll sand the inside. I think that's going to happen pretty soon here. Yeah, I'm just working on the lid, I guess. So the lid there fits just like I wanted. Now that is, I'm not done turning it. That's what it is. So I need more depth. So the finger there, doing the finger gauge again just to see where the depth is. And it needs to be deeper. So you want to get that shoulder set for your lid before you do this final turning, because you want to make sure you do not make the sides too thin to where the lid has nothing to set on. So that's why I did that first. Now I have a negative rake scraper. You want to make sure that your tool rest is above center here so that your handle is slightly above the tool rest so that your tool tip is angled down. That will help you from getting any catches, and it just helps you control the tool a little better. So some little tips of the trade there. Sorry about the real bright light here. It helped me see, but the camera doesn't like it. It's really bright for you to watch. So there I am, just doing the finger gauge again. Probably should keep me a depth gauge close by so it can be more precise, but these things don't really need to be precise. I mean, if you're off by 1/8 of an inch or so, or 1/4 of an inch, I don't know that anybody's going to know it unless they get their own depth gauge out. So I try to make things as simple as possible. Here I'm just going through the grits of sandpaper, probably final sanding it here with some 220. And then we'll turn it off and probably put some finish on. Yeah, here we go. Just putting on some of my wood butter. That helps with the camera there. It dulled it a little bit. So put this wood butter on. I want to leave these foods safe because you don't know what people might put in these. They might put some candies in, some chocolates. They might want to put salt, pepper, who knows what in these. These can be used for whatever, jewelry or food products. Pretty handy little boxes, I think. Put the wood butter on, turn it on there. I just kind of like, use the wood butter as almost a dusting agent to remove all of the dust and just kind of sharpen up this project. So there's the lid, fits. I think I'm going to get my parting tool here. When you're parting this off, you want to make sure to make this concave. So you want the center of the bowl to have less wood than the outside. That way the bowl or the box sits on the outside. So I'm taking this parting tool, slightly cutting towards the lid, right? So that there's more wood on the outside. And then before you part this all the way off, I like to just dull that edge and it gets rid of some tear out. And then I'll take this, and I will not part this all the way off. I'll get it down to about a 1/4 inch or 1/8 of an inch. Sometimes it's hard to see, and then I'll just use a saw and cut the rest of the way off. And then I just sand the nub off. Here's the finished product, the one you saw with the lid off, with the lid on. And then I'll show you a few pictures here in a minute. And it's just a nice little lidded box. The lid's nice and simple, and that fits right in. Nice, simple project. And here's some different size boxes with some different wood, just so you can kind of see what these look like. I'm really impressed. And like I said, I lucked into this project, and I've never really seen anybody make these. So if they have, I wasn't trying to steal the idea. This is one to me, this is an original idea, and I think it's so much easier to make these, and I hope this helps some of you out there make some pretty cool things and still keep that live edge on these bowls and boxes. Thanks for watching.